8-4 in Ortiz's way, yeah. So, look, 1 round back and forth, you know. It was the knockdowns is what made the points come up real close. But I think Ortiz had it.
You think 8-4 though? Like 8-4? Because I know there are certain rounds that were really close, but...
Yeah, it could have gone either way, but I feel like Ortiz dictated the pace, you know. That was a tough battle for both of them. Yeah.
What's up, fight fans? Welcome to my channel. This is Johnny, and in today's video, we're going to be going over the statistics that nobody talks about when mentioning last night's WBC interim title fight between Serhii Bohachuk and Vergil Ortiz. Guys, before we continue, I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you to everybody who's been with me since day one. And if you could please do me a favor, just simply hit the notification button. If you like the content that I make, what this will do is push me up in your algorithm to where every time I create something new, you'll be notified. Thanks. All right, guys, if you watched last night's fight, you'd agree with me probably on one thing. I could probably say you won't agree with me on everything today, but one thing's for sure, it was a classic firefight. That is something that we all spoke about in the lead up to this fight. We know Vergil Ortiz was initially supposed to take on Tim Tszyu, but that fight got scrapped, and then Bohachuk's name got thrown in the mix, and all of a sudden, Vergil was fighting for the interim WBC title. This was a classic case of stylistic warfare. When you have a guy like Bohachuk, tall for the division, long reach, his style is literally like a meat grinder, and he's gonna volume you to death. When we had this fight on paper, one of the questions I had for myself was Vergil Ortiz going to be able to make the proper adjustments to be successful with Bohachuk? Whenever we have a fight that's this close, that goes to the decision, we know that we had knockout artists, but sometimes when we have guys who are traditional fighters who never go to the scorecards, that's exactly what we're gonna get, and that's exactly what we got. Vergil won a close majority decision. One of the judges had it 113 to 113. The other two had it 114 to 112. A lot of people were split and torn on this. People were crying robbery. Some people were saying it was fair. I'm gonna tell you right now, this was not a robbery. It could have gone either way. I wouldn't have been shocked if it did go with Bohachuk, and I'm not shocked it went with Vergil. The fight was exciting from the opening bell to the finishing bell. It was marred with a few bits of controversy. When is the last time we saw a fight in which a fighter gets knocked down and then rounds later the referee has to pause in the action and say that they went to the review and it was actually a knockdown instead of a slip? This is exactly what happened in the first round. Vergil Ortiz, if you weren't watching closely, you would have missed him fall down. They initially called it a slip, and then round 4 comes. 4 rounds later, before the round starts, the ref interjects and says, hey, review looked at that slip in the first, and it's actually a knockdown, which changes the landscape of the first quarter of the fight, because some people had Vergil winning 10-9 due to the slip. It gets turned into a knockdown, and now Serhii's up 10-8 in round 1. He gets knocked down again in the 8th, and once again, if you weren't watching, they were exchanging in the pocket, and Vergil sits down on a mean left hook and gets clipped and falls. Knees don't hit, but we know in boxing, if your gloves hit the canvas, it is a knockdown. So Serhii on the scorecards has knockdowns in 1 and 8, 2 10-8 rounds, and Vergil has to do a lot to make up for this, but I felt like he did. I gave Ortiz the middle rounds, and I gave him the championship rounds, including 9 and 10. So when I heard the decision, I wouldn't have been surprised if it could have gone to Serhii because the 2 knockdowns, but I wasn't shocked that it went to Vergil. Also, I'd like to mention the adjustments that Vergil Ortiz made in this fight, in my opinion, helped tell the story. It started off typical Bohachuk fashion, and Vergil was fighting Bohachuk's fight initially. Bohachuk, his volume is through the roof, his pace is through the roof, and he doesn't really sit down on his shots. I don't want to necessarily say arm punches, but his whole style is to stand in front of you in the pocket and just volume you. And Vergil played this game early, and it wasn't going too well. I'm not saying he was losing the early rounds, because I did give him some of the early rounds, but he was getting hit a lot. Then we saw an adjustment made in the mid rounds. Vergil leaves the pocket and chooses to go on the outside. This was advice from his corner, Robert Garcia, and he started using his jab from the outside, negating Bohachuk's game plan of peppering you from the inside. A couple rounds passed, Vergil's working the jab to the body, throwing the jab up top. When he started landing his lead hook, he then moves back into the pocket. What this does in the mid to later rounds, Bohachuk loses a bit of his power. Virgil went to the body from the early rounds to the late, and that early body investment also helped negate Bohachuk's power in the late rounds. So you had Virgil make the adjustments of moving from the pocket to outside of the pocket, started using his jab more, the body investment. When Virgil made the decision to come back into Bohachuk's wheelhouse in the late rounds, Bohachuk's power was not the same, and I felt like this is when Virgil Ortiz took over. This was a great adjustment. Bohachuk is not one-dimensional, but when it comes to his game plan, you could kind of say he is. We know what he wants to do. He wants to fight you in the pocket, and he wants to outpace you and out-volume you, and he wants to break you. And I feel if Ortiz would have done this from round 1 to round 12, Virgil wouldn't have got the decision. But that adjustment, in my eyes, made the fight for him and went his way. Now let's take a closer look at the statistics. We're gonna look at the punch stats, the jabs, and the power shots, and these are the punches that are gonna help tell the story of the outcome. Guys, when we look at the total output of the fight, Bohachuk throws 832, landing 225 at a 27% clip. Ortiz throws 747, landing 265 at a 36% clip. That's something that I was quite shocked at. I wasn't shocked that Bohachuk was throwing more volume. I expected this, but Ortiz was the more accurate puncher, and this led to him getting a lot more shots on Bohachuk in terms of the judges' scorecards. Also, when you look at the volume, it's not always about how much you throw, it's about how much you land. And statistically, Ortiz was 10% better than Bohachuk. Now let's look at the jabs. Throughout the fight, Bohachuk throws 417, landing 82 at a 20% clip. Ortiz throws 316, landing 76 at a 24% clip. Once again, Bohachuk throws more. Virgil Ortiz throws less at a higher statistical percentage. Those jabs that Ortiz started landing more accurately were from the outside of the pocket. When we look at the fight narrative, it wasn't the jabs that necessarily won Virgil the fight on the scorecards. I felt like it was the power and the overall damage that Virgil's body shots did and his power punches did. Let's look at the total power punches throughout the fight for both guys. Bohachuk throws 415 power shots, landing 143 at a 35% clip. Virgil throws 431, landing 189 at a 44% clip. So of the jabs, of the power shots, of the total punches, the only statistical category that Virgil outthrew Bohachuk were the power shots. He was more accurate on 3. Virgil, his accuracy and precision on his jabs, overall punch total, and power shots were higher, and this is what Virgil wanted to do. I feel going into the fight, he thought his power would be the deciding factor. I just don't think that he knew he would have had to make an adjustment early on to help negate Bohachuk's pace, and he did that. And in my eyes, this is once again why I say this was the story of the fight. Watching Ortiz go from Bohachuk's wheelhouse in the pocket to exiting the pocket, forcing Bohachuk to follow him out there. Then he would run onto Virgil's jabs, and then as a few rounds passed, Virgil moved right back into the pocket, and what this did was, it did a couple things. Bohachuk's power wasn't the same, his output wasn't the same, but Virgil's power was still there. It helped carry into the late rounds. Even though Virgil got dropped twice, I said in the comment section on the post that I did during the fight that they were fluky, and some of you guys were coming to me, how can a knockdown be fluky? Well, when's the last time we saw a knockdown in 1 round and 4 rounds later the ref says, oh, it wasn't a slip, it was a knockdown? That's a bit of a fluke. Also, Virgil's knockdown in the 8th, it was a bit of a flash, but his gloves hit. We know that's technically a knockdown, but when we hear knockdown in boxing, we think about something bigger, something more substantial, something that you're gonna get a standing count with, and neither knockdowns were that for Virgil. He did have to overcome that on the scorecards. 2-10-8s is tough to overcome, but we've seen this before in championship fights. It doesn't always mean the fighter is gonna lose the fight. How I feel Virgil did climb that hill to overcome those 10-8s were from rounds 9 to 12, specifically 11 and 12, the championship rounds, and I feel this is where Virgil Ortiz got the decision. Guys, you don't have to agree with me. Let me know who you thought won this fight, Virgil or Bohachuk, as well in the comment section below. Who do you want to see Virgil Ortiz fight next, and who do you want to see Bohachuk fight next? Leave all that in the comment section below.